We're good.
We're going to call the meeting to order for the Clemson City Police Advisory Board for September 28th. We'll start with the roll call. Myself, Lisa Robinson, present. Eunice Lehmacher, here. Kevin Dull,
Present.
Sandy Edge,
Present.
Riley Wright, our Clemson student rep, is excused today. Dr. William King,
Present.
Elaine Masseri, Winton Hunter, and Ashby Williams. Okay, great. And we will now go on to the approval of the agenda. You should have that in front of you. If all seems in order, if I could get a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We'll now go on to the approval of the previous minutes, and these are the minutes from August 31st. Again, you have those in front of you. They're also posted on the city website under the PAB meeting. Are there any changes, additions, edits?
Move to accept the minutes as written.
Wait a second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Okay. Okay, we'll now go on to citizens' comments. And we don't have any other citizens waiting to speak at this time, so we will move on to our presentation by Jennifer Gorey.
Just as this is kind of a quick throw on the agenda. We had talked about this, but before Jennifer starts, and thank you, Jennifer and,
Yes, thank you.
Kelly for coming. So we had talked before about our underage drinking issues that we have here in town and what's being done to try to address them. And I was made aware of a pilot project that the city of Charleston had done not too long ago where they provided to businesses a particular app that the businesses could use to verify IDs, to try and cut down on the fake IDs. And they did it for a period of time and they claimed it to be a success. During some of the recent meetings, it was brought to the attention of some of our local business owners, and a couple of our business owners asked, well, why don't we do something similar here? So I started looking into it, started looking into the national policies and practices that are out there, that are already established and codified and out there. And so I discussed this with Andy, and we are going to propose doing a pilot project as well here. But it's going to be more than that. We need to take a stance, I think, as a city and as a council on how we are going to put preventative measures in place to combat this instead of dealing with the same old, same old. I have a stack of fake IDs that is just a small sample of what we get downtown every night. And I'll pass them along to show you that you can just do a simple Google search for fake IDs that can pass a scanner, and they tout on the website that they will pass any scan check. And for $100 or less, you can get a couple of IDs that look just like their regular IDs, and as you see as they come around, and they get them for any state you want. So I reached out to Jennifer to ask about information they may collect for the student population in regards to alcohol and alcohol-related events, because usually what we see in this age group is not just the use of or consumption of alcohol, but the excessive consumption of alcohol, the binge drinking, the other very provocative and dangerous behavior when it comes to alcohol, which she has that information, and that's what she's going to present. And the reasoning for that is when we do come up with these policies and these preventative measures, it's to combat these other things more so. One very disturbing thing that I hear and I've heard recently, actually a couple of disturbing things. I know some parents have recently been arrested by the University Police Department bringing alcohol on campus to students that were underage. I hear from students and student-age people all the time that having a fake ID and getting in a bar is a rite of passage, and it's looked at as an accomplishment to engage in these activities. We had another individual that was stopped not too long ago that had alcohol on them. The sister, who was of age, came over and tried to vouch for the brother, and during the conversation with the officer, trying to get her brother out of trouble, she said, well, we're from Columbia. That's just the way things are done in Columbia.
Oh.
So it's becoming a very serious issue. We've had two very serious crashes that occurred in the last 4 weeks where the folks that were involved in the crashes were intoxicated, they were underage, and they're lucky to be alive. So I think we really need to take a strong stance on this. And again, Jennifer, thank you for coming, and she's going to definitely enlighten us on statistics that we probably don't ever hear.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. We really
Chief,
appreciate
can I
you
ask
being here.
one thing? We talked about the database before about checking the IDs. Did we go to that, or are we still?
When she's done, I'll get into that, where we're going with the pilot project and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Absolutely. I'm really glad to be here, and I'll introduce Kelly Metcalf in a little bit. Chief, do you have a clicker, or are you just going to click?
You just tell me, and I'll.
And so what I'm going to share with you today is some data that we collect every other year, the National College Health Assessment. So we have been looking at alcohol-related data for over a decade at Clemson, and we can compare ourselves to ourselves over time and also to national averages. And I think that's very enlightening to sort of see where we stand as a university. Talk a little bit about why college students drink, underage drinking in particular, what are the risk factors and consequences, and then Kelly will just introduce sort of a broad overview of the college alcohol intervention matrix, or the college AIM. And this is a guiding document that is an evidence-based best practices categorization of interventions. So how much they cost, how effective they are. And we use that to create our alcohol and other drug strategic plan. So we want to do things that we know are effective, and we want to do things that are cost effective and actually have demonstrated success. And enforcement is one of the things that has demonstrated success. So if you could go to the next slide. So the National College Health Assessment Instrument is a nationally normed survey that colleges and universities use across the country to look at a lot of different health outcomes. So the data I'm going to show you tonight is just alcohol-related data. And each slide has the same sort of color coding. That actually kind of looks like blue. It's supposed to be dark purple for Clemson data for 2020. Interestingly enough, we did this survey right before we shut down for COVID. So this is really, truly pre-COVID 2020 data. The dark gray is the national reference data for that year. Orange is 2022, so post-COVID, and then the light gray is the national data for 2022. Next slide. So this first slide is just looking at tobacco, alcohol, and other drug use ever. So you can see that for alcoholic beverages, we're just very slightly higher than the national average for having ever used alcohol specifically. I do think it's also important to see that, the other drugs, so cocaine's, prescription stimulants, hallucinogens, prescription opioids, those are very concerning, but they're also very low when you compare them to alcohol and cannabis. So next slide. So this is substance use in the past 3 months. Clearly about 3/4 of our students are using alcohol and have used alcohol in the past 3 months, again, slightly higher than the national average. Next slide.
So these are just students at Clemson, any age student. So
Any age student.
grad student, undergrad,
Yes,
everything.
yeah. And Chief, if you just want to kind of click through those, it'll populate the slides fairly, will fly in. So go ahead and click it maybe 3 more times. this is basically showing you, that's in a weird place there. It screwed up the spacing. Clemson students have higher rates of alcohol use than the national average. So, and particularly the last bullet on either side, 50% of college students nationally reported binge drinking in the past 2 weeks. That, I believe, says 60.6
Yeah.
for Clemson. So it's a significant increase. So our students tend to either not drink or drink pretty responsibly, but with them we have a group of students who are high risk binge drinkers, and those of course are the ones we're the most worried about. So next slide. This is a scale that looks at problematic alcohol and other drug use. So it asks in the past 3 months, have you ever used more of your prescription medication than prescribed, more often than is prescribed? Do you have a strong desire or urge to use a substance? Has it led to health, social, legal, or financial problems? How often have you failed to do what was normally expected of you because of your use of the substance? Has a friend or anyone else expressed concern? And have you ever tried and failed to control? So this is really getting into sort of some addictive, very problematic behavior. So for Clemson, what jumps out to me right away is that the numbers aren't super high, 18% in 2020 and 14% in 2022, but they're higher than the national average. And 14% of really problematic behaviors around alcohol and other drugs is not an insignificant percentage, but definitely it's higher than the national average. Interestingly enough, if you look at cannabis, we're lower than the national average. So alcohol is, our kind of particular problem. Now, next slide.
Word of choice.
Yeah. So this is high risk. That first one was moderate risk. We are not as high as the national average for this, which is good. And we're also talking very, very low percentages here. When you get into really, really significant addiction sorts of behaviors, we're lower, as we should be. I mean, these are young students. We're on the beginning stage of this. Okay, next slide. This slide is probably one of the most important, this one and the next one. So these are the negative consequences our students tell us that they are experiencing due to their alcohol consumption. Again, you just look at it, we're higher than the national average on all of them. Brownout, blackout, and doing something you later regretted. So this is indicative of a high enough level of alcohol consumption that you are in a high-risk state of serious negative outcomes. They're not remembering what they're doing. They don't know where they are. They cannot defend themselves, protect themselves, and then they are doing things that they are later regretting. And those are pretty high numbers. For brownout, almost 30% of students who drink. I should have said that at first. So the students who do not drink are excluded from these percentages. Next slide. These are the continued negative consequences. So needing medical help, physically injured yourself, got in trouble with the university, or got in trouble with the police. Physically injured yourself was really high in 2022 for Clemson compared to everyone else. And I also want to point out that we're slightly higher than the national average for getting in trouble with the university and getting in trouble with the police. And what I would say about that is that's good. What that means is we're enforcing our laws. So if anything, you would kind of want to see those numbers going up to then see some of these negative consequences going down. So kudos to you all that you're higher than the national average. So next slide. This is looking at binge drinking, which is defined as having 5 or more drinks in one sitting. Again, we're clearly higher than the national average. So of those who drink, 60% of our students are reporting binge drinking in the past 2 weeks. Interestingly enough, though, and I think this directly ties back to the enforcement, our students are not drinking and driving after alcohol or cannabis use at the same rates as the national average. And that is absolutely related to enforcement. The more enforcement, we know enforcement has an enormous effect on that. So again, kudos.
Could it also be access to alternative means of transportation?
It could be that too, and we do have that. I think and I know Clemson University Police has had a real focus on trying to get folks who are driving under the influence. I assume y'all are doing the same thing.
When we can. We get very, very busy during bar closing, and we're on foot mostly.
Okay.
But I will also point out too, Cat Bus gets completely loaded down
Sure.
and packed like sardines and shuttles people out of the downtown area. So every single one of those getting on that bus is one less potential car on the road. So.
Absolutely, which is fantastic that we have that resource, for sure.
And then of course we have Uber too, but.
Right.
Question? So the last 2 weeks, so this study is just now, so I'm wondering if it has some correlation with the football games.
Well, this is the last 2 weeks that they took this survey, and this survey is administered in, and we do it very intentionally. It's the last week of February leading up to spring break. So they've been at Clemson for at least a semester, but it is not during football season. So we really wanted to capture sort of a neutral sort of time frame. So this would not have anything to do with football.
Okay.
Good
Thank you.
question. This is just another way of looking at these numbers if you like looking at numbers versus bar graphs. But again, you can really see that we're higher than the national average on some of these very concerning things like blackouts, brownouts, doing something you regretted, and physically injuring yourself. So this is and then, as I said, we like the fact that our students are getting in trouble with the police. It means we're doing a good job. Okay, next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Kelly now, and she will talk about sort of the next steps, why students drink, and then sort of our approach and what the best research shows about what is effective in terms of addressing those challenges. So, thank you.
All right, Chief, there's like 6 things that are going to pop up, so if you just want to go ahead and click, that would be good so we can just all see it. Perfect. All right, so like she said, my name is Kelly Metcalf. I'm going to go over just a few different things, and then I want to talk about specifically why we really think that what Chief is proposing is going to be beneficial and helpful for the community as a whole. So this is something we put in front of our students, and normally I ask students to list off reasons for me, but I'm not going to ask you to do the same. But why do students drink? There's a long list of reasons here. We look at things like peer pressure, comfort, stress, coping strategies, whatever it may be. And one thing I'd like to point out is these are all obviously different things, and the motivations for drinking are different for each person, and students really do actually like to discuss these topics, and they get in, sorry, I've had a cough. They get into great detail about how relevant this is and how often they are seeing it, like our RAs or RCMs now, how they are seeing it, and it's not just one group of students, it really is kind of across the board. Chief, you can go to the next one. You can click. All right. Okay, so with this in mind, so why students drink, I want us to specifically look at some data that looks at underage drinking. So here you can see 3.4 million, or that 34.4% reported that they had at least one drink in their lives. So this is from 12 to 20 to encompass that age we're looking at for underage drinking of like that 18 to 20 gap, and how the NIAAA formats that. So then the next one there is that 8.3%, or 3.2 million people reported binge drinking in the last month. And then we also have that 13,000 reported heavy alcohol use in the past month. So a positive from this, though, is that from 2002 to 2021, we can see that there's been a slight decline in underage drinking, but those numbers just as Jennifer was saying earlier, the numbers they still matter, they're still relevant, and it's still something to definitely consider and look into. And then we are going to look a little bit closer into, if you'll go to the next slide for me, Chief. I'm sorry, y'all, the formatting is a little off from our, there we go, from how it formatted on my computer. But here we're going to look at the research about alcohol use in teenagers specifically. So when we think about freshmen, sophomore, even juniors, they're still fairly young, depending on when their birthdays are and when they roll in. So it can interfere with brain development, increase in developing an alcohol use disorder, things of that nature. And while these two things are very serious, let's also just think of things like getting in trouble with the police, injury to self, harming property, overdoses, and even death. So these things are definitely all relevant and things we want to consider when we're thinking about underage drinking in the community and how easy it can be for them. So in the U.S., though, specifically, we're looking at deaths of people younger than 25, or younger than 21, I'm sorry. And these are the different reasons for it. And right there you will see 190 from alcohol overdose, falls, burns, and drowning. So these things are high up on the list when it comes to alcohol use. If you'll go to the next one for me. So here we are going to talk about the benefits of waiting. So the benefits of enforcing this rule to say, let's not drink until 21. Well, we talked about things like teenagers and their mental development. So if they wait until 21, their short-term, long-term cognitive skills are able to form better. Their decision-making skills and even just memories are able to really fully develop before introducing substances. Another thing for emotionally, they're less likely to have self-esteem issues. Mental health conditions such as alcoholism, depression, stress, and risk of suicide. These are all things we're seeing kind of across the board right now in the media, different topics we're seeing as far as things that are important and we need to look into, right? And then for students specifically, if they wait to drink, their academic performance is much more likely to stay up, be higher if they do not introduce any substances. And then this is from our Aspire to Be Well. So in 2016, it says here that on average, 4,000 people under the age of 21 died to alcohol-related injuries. That's a large number when you really think about the specifics to alcohol. You can go ahead, Chief. All right, these risk factors specific to college students. So the first 6 weeks of class, where we are currently just now coming out of, or no, this is the 6th week. So we are right here in 6 weeks. This is the highest functioning time for alcohol use. This is when students are the most vulnerable. They are in this kind of stigma and this expectation of what college is supposed to be, right? And these 6 weeks is when we see tons of conduct reports. We see different things happening with the city and also with university police. The next point here, talking about students attending a college with a large Greek population and a prominent football team. They also are likely to drink more than students at other types of schools. So that's just something to consider and kind of look at our population and look at our environments. And in terms of housing, it's also noted that students living in fraternities, sororities, Greek life, are also living in homes off campus with families, have a higher alcohol consumption. Thank you. Okay, so now we are going to look at some other risk factors, and we're specifically going to talk about sexual assault. So roughly 696,000 students ages 18 to 24 are assaulted by another student that has been consuming alcohol. So alcohol is involved in some point. While sexual assault is obviously a very underreported crime, these numbers researchers still feel are relevant and accurate. So 1 in 5 college women experience sexual assault during their time in college. And then a majority of these sexual assaults in college involve alcohol or some other substance. So if we can use this enforcement rule and really limit the amount of alcohol consumption, just think of how these numbers could look different. And this isn't just a Clemson issue, this is nationally, but still just think of how those numbers could change. Chief? Oh, thank you. Okay, so now that we've discussed, Jennifer went over very specific Clemson data, I've kind of shown you nationally. Now what I want to discuss with you are these, what we kind of refer to in our office as a gold standard of prevention and work within college campuses. So Healthy Campus used this platform specifically to conduct like an in-house audit for the university when we redid our strategic plan for alcohol and other drug use. And it was pretty eye-opening to see the things that we are doing, that we're kind of working on, and to see the things that are in the world of college aim, the NIAAA, that are extremely effective. So they're going to get a star, 2 stars, or 3 stars. Chief, if you'll go, yep, and click maybe twice. Yep. Okay, so here is a look at their website and just some of the examples here. You can see that they have those 3 stars there, and this is a highly effective version of something that they're putting in place. So this skills training, we kind of rebranded it, and it is Aspire to Be Well at Clemson, that all first year students are going through as a part of CE 1000. Chief, you can go to the next one over. So these are things that are ranked as highly effective. You'll see that mid-range cost on the bottom, and then higher cost but also still highly effective is Alcohol EDU, which also goes out to all first year transfer students, where they're learning about what is a standard drink. When you ask a student what is a standard glass of wine, what's a standard shot, they have no idea. They're just seeing it poured on TV, seeing it in bars. They have no idea what it is. So we are educating them on those things. We are also talking about how to be an active bystander in that training that all students get. And then eCheckup to Go is also a resource through CAPS that we utilize as well. Chief, if you'll go to the next one. So these are things we are kind of working on developing a little bit more that are lower cost but still very effective for the college aim matrix. So the brief motivational intervention would be within our ACT program, so our alcohol and other drug counseling within CAPS, our counseling and psychological services at Clemson. So they are working on different ways to help the students that are referred to them that are high risk or even moderate risk in our population to talk through these topics with them. You can go next one for me, Chief. Okay, so these are our environmental strategies. So this is beyond just the ones we looked at previously were individual. So this is our environmental strategies, things like an amnesty policy, or we obviously have Friday morning classes, so we're still going to encourage students to take those. Different things throughout that list. And then I want to look at this kind of mixed effectiveness. We have ride shares, sorry, I'm going to this one. Require a unique design for the state ID cards at age less than 21. I did want to point this out because South Carolina does this. We have the sideways ones if you are, or I guess technically they're vertical, if you are under 21, and then the horizontal, I don't know, it's so funny to like think about how you're looking at it, but that's kind of like mixed, we're looking at that. And then higher effective, like the highest standard you can get right there, enforcing age 21 drinking age, and then implementing bystander intervention is kind of that mid-range cost as well. Chief, if you'll go, thank you. Okay, and then continuing in these developing environmental strategies, we have restricting happy hours and price promotions. These things are happening a lot downtown, right? That is seen as a very highly effective way to lower the amount that people are drinking, not just students, but we can think of it in that age range. And then we also, if you'll go back for me one real quick. So one thing that's kind of like mid-range there as far as cost and effectiveness is the partnering and use of like campaigns for sorting events with like Bud Light or stuff like that. That's kind of mid-ground and somewhat effective as well. So I mean, you don't see it everywhere. Just think of how that branding works subconsciously.
Do we sell alcohol? I don't go to sporting events. Sure. Do we sell alcohol at our sporting events?
So there, it's kind of, it differs. So if you go to a baseball game, if you enter into just the traditional part of the baseball game, my understanding, anyone correct me if I'm wrong here, the sale of alcohol is not happening in this department, but then, so across the field, if you're familiar with like the Cajun Cafe, that's on the other end, I don't know if that's right, I guess right field?
I don't know.
Over there, then alcohol's happening there. So it's,
Behind those things.
yes, there you go. It's a little, I think there is intentionality to, in a way, put boundaries around it, but it is happening in some areas.
And I think it's up for discussion for the larger venues now, because I know the SEC allows it, some of the other conferences allow it, and so I think they're having those discussions at Clemson as well.
Kelly, on a
Yes.
previous slide, you had residence halls, and it said no alcohol residence halls?
Correct.
Isn't that standard for all residence halls, or do we actually have residence halls?
No, at
that permit
Clemson, we
alcohol?
are, yes, absolutely, no alcohol in residence halls.
That's
That's the
okay.
rule.
Yes,
Right.
that is the rule.
Right, well,
Yes, but clearly,
Right.
But it is the
But that's
rule.
the-
yes, clearly Chief shared a story earlier that that's not
Clearly,
happening.
there's an effort to not follow rules sometimes.
Right, yes, but no, sorry for any confusion there. We absolutely at Clemson are saying no alcohol in residence. And Chief, if you'll go to the next one and click one more time, we're just gonna have a nice little box around that enforcing age 21 drinking age. We really feel that, obviously it is the law, but we also feel that if we put this enforcement in place that Chief is suggesting, that it's the highest form of effectiveness. We can see that. We see this kind of gold standard where research is showing this is how we kind of control and, in a way, enforce these things. It really can make a difference for our entire community across the board for safety. I mean, you're talking about these regs. Just think of all of that, not just Clemson University and students, but wider spread. I do want to also open the floor. I don't know if you have any questions for Jennifer or myself that we'd be happy to answer. The next slide is just our website.
Yeah, I have a question. So, do you think, looking at the data, and do you feel like it is a cultural norm for students in, say, junior high school and high school that they're bringing with them to college? Or is it when they get to college, they sort of perceive this is what you do in college? I mean, is it something that's starting a little bit younger and then they're bringing that behavior with them? Or is it just kind of a mashup of all of that?
I hate to answer your question this way, and Jennifer, you can jump in as well. I think it's a little bit of both, unfortunately. We're seeing the alcohol EDU that we use for first-year students. They are pushing that. They kind of do other things with high school students, but I've had conversations with, and not just looking at numbers, but also conversations with actual students where it's students that have never drank before that come and they have no idea what it's like. So like I said, when we're talking about a standard drink size, the reason that's so important is because a young girl, I was in a training, and a young girl was like, I only had 3 drinks. Well, she ordered 3 doubles. She had absolutely no idea that when this bartender said, oh, do you want a double, that she's getting double the amount of alcohol.
Well, you think of the size of a solo cup, and if that's considered a standard
Right.
pour, that's
Right.
way more than anybody needs to have. Yeah.
Exactly. So the students that haven't been exposed are now exposed, and they don't have that base level education. So their consumption goes up. But I also do think that the higher risk students that we are looking at, even though those percentages were low, those high risk students typically, I would say if you looked back at the data, they probably have started consuming younger. And I think that you can speak to this as well if you have a different opinion, but it's continuing throughout, and it just I'm in a way kind of, blooms is such a pretty word, but it does kind of just bloom and come to blossom when they come. And it's the expectation, it's this societal norm, you know what I'm saying?
There's actually, that phenomenon is described as the college effect. So what we try to do in health promotion and from a public health perspective is mitigate that curve. We know and expect it's going to rise. So the best we can do is, curb it a little bit and mitigate the rise. So it's a predictable behavior that they come to campus, they have less supervision. It's the expectation, societal expectation. So there's this dramatic increase in drinking, and then the goal is to try to kind of keep a lid on it. And I really liked what you were saying about focusing on the underage drinking part, because if we can demonstrate as a society our concern about that, it can help mitigate those lifelong addictive behaviors that can get established early on, so that you're addressing the problem early, so it doesn't bloom into something much worse.
So do you think that that the age that students are able to rush and join Greek life is a factor in this? That you maybe have a house where you have people who are of age and people who aren't of age, and that this is sort of something that is taking place when they first come in? Is that a factor at all, do you think?
There have been lots of conversations about deferred rush, and a lot of it does have to do with these high-risk behaviors.
I mean, I understand the reason for that. They want people in the house so they can assume leadership roles and they can be there for a while, but
It's a
they're,
balance, for sure.
they're exposed to more early.
I think, I think it's a conversation worth continuing to explore, but it has happened over the years at Clemson, and it's not been successful at pushing that out. On the other hand, I do think that it is, in terms of giving some credit to fraternity and sorority life, they do a lot of prevention work around this. It is undeniably, the data shows that it is the highest risk group. That is a reality. But there's a lot of effort and attention put on that as well.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, Sandy?
These slides, are they from a group of slides that has a university in a town, or?
In terms of the national reference.
Is this like looking at a slide like USC and Columbia, or are these just national data?
The data I shared was college specific. So it's Clemson University compared to other colleges and universities across the country.
That's what this is.
Yeah. Kelly shared some national data.
Yeah, my portion was more national. Hers was very
Okay.
college specific.
And I would, seems to me like fraternities and sororities are still out there kind of selling the news, though, sometimes, that we're here to shepherd these folks. You're going to be here, and we're going to give you a lot of information, and for your classes, you're going to do better. But it sounds like that data's still out there, that fraternities and sororities are, Okay.
Well, they do. I mean, fraternity sorority, their grades are good. They look at all of those things, but there is no way around. There is no way to dress it up in any other way than they drink more.
Right.
I mean, that's there, and in a high risk way. That is, it's people don't like to say it that bluntly, but the data shows that.
Do we have other questions for Jennifer Kelly?
Yeah, certainly the percentage of, the alcohol statistics are terrifying, but, also alcohol interacting with prescription drugs. I didn't know, do y'all have any statistics on the number of college students who are on prescription medications, and ADHD meds, mood stabilizers? I mean, that's even more terrifying when they're mixing this binge drinking with those type of medicines. And the other question would be, you did mention something like a responsible bystander or so in the training, like see something, say something, and I don't remember how positive effect that had, but that is distressing when you see alcohol deaths and Tucker hips,
Right.
no one will even say anything after the fact.
Right. Well, to your first question, I don't think there is a question on the NCHA that asks, are you drinking while you're taking prescription drugs?
There's not. So we can see if students say yes, they are drinking, or yes, they are taking prescription drugs, but it's not.
Mixing.
Yeah.
Our numbers for prescription drug misuse or illegal drug use is pretty low, but any of it is really concerning. And we're particularly concerned, we have been focusing in our office and with Clemson University Police very, very heavily on fentanyl poisoning. So the potential to have illegal medications be laced with fentanyl and have accidental death by overdose because of fentanyl. So that's a real concern for us right now.
Okay.
In terms of the bystander intervention success, we have a lot of data. We've been tracking that. We do a pre-survey test. So what is your level of knowledge before you go through this training? A post-survey, so 48 hours after the training, what do you remember? And then a 3-month follow-up. And we actually asked some behavioral outcome questions. Were you in a position where you could have intervened, and did you? And we have very strong data that those educational programs are effective at helping people recognize warning signs and risk factors and having at least the knowledge and some comfort level in doing something about it. However, we also hear stories of students downtown being found passed out on the street and people walking past them. This is the bystander effect is a phenomenon that takes place all over. People don't intervene. So it takes a lot to get, especially if you're 18 to 22, you may not have the self-esteem to intervene.
So I recently spoke to the IFC, and this is the question that was asked falls in line with what Jennifer's talking about, and they were asking, was there amnesty if someone reported someone drunk from the house getting sanctioned? And I couldn't answer that because they're asking specifically about university rules, interfraternal council rules, not laws that we would do out in town. So my answer was, well, out in town, we're not looking for the same things the university is looking at. I said, but you have individuals that are weighing whether their chapter is going to get in trouble because somebody's too drunk and calling for an ambulance and risking whether that person is going to go to sleep and swallow their tongue and choke to death or vomit on themselves or something because they're afraid the chapter's going to get in trouble. And so that's some of the things that weigh in their mind. Now, if it's a drug use, there's amnesty laws in the state law, so they can call 911 and that person, and so then they're not going to get in trouble. So when it comes to alcohol, they're looking at it a little bit differently. And we see things all the time. I had a group of sorority girls that were dragging their sorority sister down the street. She couldn't even walk. And I said, where are you going with her? Oh, we're going to put her in her apartment and put her to bed. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're calling an ambulance and she's going to the hospital. She could not stand up. She was not conscious. She kept vomiting. I'm like, no, she's going to the hospital. She has alcohol poisoning. You don't know what's going to happen to her when you put her in her room. But that's how they think about stuff like that because they're afraid of getting in trouble. I said, don't worry about getting in trouble. Worry about whether your friend's going to be alive the next day or not. So that's some of the things that we combat.
So when those students are at the bar in that condition, they just call last call and they leave and that's that? I mean, this establishment doesn't have any...
Usually they either walk out before they get too sick or they get kicked out. They kick them out.
Okay, I
and
see.
they put them out on the street. And then the friends are left to try and pick them up and either get them home or get them somewhere else. Or we happen upon them. And then in the city, we have a public intoxication law. They're either going to get arrested if we can't get anybody to help them, and we'll take them to jail. But if they're too much out of it, we'll call an ambulance and have them if they can't. The problem with the ambulance is if they're conscious enough and lucid enough to tell EMS they don't want to go to the hospital, they're not going to take them. So there's not a forcible treatment plan there. So in that situation, what usually winds up happening is we'll arrest them for public intoxication and take them to the jail, and they'll sleep it off in the jail, but they'll be monitored the whole time because we monitor the jail. So that's usually what happens in situations. South Carolina doesn't have they have the EPC law where you put emergency protection law in place, but they're not going to be EPC for alcoholism. And so there are other states that have laws that will allow you to take somebody into protective custody, send them to a treatment facility, i.e. the emergency room, to receive treatment for that, and then when they are treated and feel like they can release them, they'll go ahead and release them. But that's not the way it is here in South Carolina.
Is there some reason that a bartender or somebody that owns these bars could not work in coordination with the police, could have some communication to let y'all know? I mean, they've got to see these people passed out and thrown out on the street. This kind of thing, are they afraid too? Or
No, they,
Or are they over-serving?
so, you know, there's a lot of factors involved in that. People say, are they over-serving? I don't think bartenders and servers will serve to someone that they think is way too drunk. It's someone going to get the drink for that person and bringing it back to them. So the server and or the bartender isn't seeing where those drinks are getting funneled to, okay? And there may be a situation where they are, but most of them don't want to get in trouble because the way the law is written, if we find out that they are doing that, then they can be criminally charged for doing that. So they don't want to get in trouble. So it's a variety of factors. However, along the lines of your question, my pilot project that I'm going to talk about here and where I'm going with this, you know, we talk about our staffing and we don't have the staff to do the enforcement piece. We need the help of the establishments that sell alcohol to do some of that enforcement piece for us. And that's where I'm going with this pilot project and moving forward, so.
Is the bystander training voluntary or everybody has to take it?
It's not voluntary. They do the online training before they move in, and then they do the Aspire to Be Well training as part of CU1000. So they get a not pass on their transcript if they don't complete it.
I had one question. I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but where do you collect all this information, and where does I mean, all the information sounds great, but where do you get all the data to say, you know, who signs up to do this? The students for the
survey?
Survey, right.
The survey, we work with institutional research at Clemson. They generate a list of 5,000 randomly selected and representative students. So, you know, from each year, gender, they look at all the demographics, get a representative sample. We send it out, we have incentives, and then they voluntarily fill out that survey. And it's anonymous and it's confidential.
Okay.
And we do it every 2 years. In terms of the other data, like for Aspire, because it's required, they're not required to do the surveys, the pre-post and 4-month follow-up, but we have had incentives for that as well to try to gather data to see if what we're teaching is working. You know, just because you know how to intervene, why to intervene, it doesn't mean you're going to do it when it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're worried you're going to get your sorority sister in trouble.
Right.
But you know, it's better. We're talking to them about it. We're having those conversations. And we have data that they have the knowledge. They do have the knowledge. And I did also want to mention the amnesty policy. I don't know whether you've heard that the goal is to have that include other drugs for Clemson, for the university, so we're to match the state. Right.
Do we have any other questions? Either Jennifer or Kelly?
Would you have any recommendations for us or anything we could do to help or?
I'm real excited about this fake ID.
I haven't talked to you yet about the project, so they're more than welcome to stay and listen. Thank you very much for the information and the data.
Yeah, thank you for it.
So,
We definitely appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
What I'm working on, I'll just give you a couple of real quick things here that I found that's, I think, relevant. A lot of people ask, well, where did the under 21 laws come from? I mean, why are they there? Well, very similar to our speed limit laws, the federal government passed a law in 1984 of the minimum age of 21 for drinking. So every single state has under 21 laws, because if they don't get federal funding for streets. So that's the standard. Now, I bring that up because a lot of times it seems like at our state level, the legislature gets a little more lax and a little more lax and a little more lax about what the consequences are for having a fake ID, which I passed around, or some of the things that are used to facilitate being under the age of 21. And some people will ask, well, why don't we just get rid of the law if we don't care? why don't we just get rid of it? Well, they can't, because if they do, then they won't get federal funding for the streets. So there's no mandatory law in South Carolina to train your staff. This is one of the states that does not have a mandatory law for that, okay? There's no mandatory law to use devices to detect fake IDs. So if you're not training your staff and you're not giving them the instruments to detect what is going on, you're behind the 8 ball. So just if anybody knows, how many businesses do you think inside the city limits of Clemson, 8 square miles, has a license to sell or serve an alcoholic beverage?
380.
No? 70. There are 70 businesses inside our city that have a license. Now, this includes places like Publix, places like Everland, places like Clemson Downs, where if they're going to serve alcohol at one of their functions, they have to have a license, okay? But the vast majority of them are convenience stores, are liquor stores, are restaurants, and are bars, okay? The vast majority of them. So the pilot project that I'm going to propose and ask for your support on is going to kind of mimic what the city of Charleston did. City of Charleston did this. They found voluntary businesses, both not just bars and not just restaurants, but convenience stores and such, to voluntarily use a particular application that I talked to you all about before. I had to correct myself. I told you that application bounces it against the database. It doesn't. I learned something new. What it does do is there are security things embedded in the scan bar, and it learns and knows what those are, and that's what it looks for. And if it doesn't find them, then it flags it as bad. If it does find them, then it says it's good. But they are enhancing that product. They are going to be comparing the driver's license numbers now to a database to give further detection on whether it's a fake ID or not. That particular company that they used in Charleston is the same company here. It's the parent company is called IntelliCheck. The app is called Age ID. We do have a couple of businesses here in town that use it. We have a bunch of other businesses that use other scanners. The problem with the other scanners is they don't have the knowledge and the technology to detect those security things that are embedded in the scan bar. So all they're doing is finding the date of birth that's in there and calculating how old that person would be and displaying it on a screen. So that's why the websites tout that these are scannable and they'll get through, because that's all most of those scanners do. It doesn't have additional. IntelliCheck is in the business of not just for alcohol, but they use it in banks and financial institutions and such to check IDs. So they have a vested interest in making sure that no fraudulent accounts are being opened in somebody else's name, so on and so forth. So that's why this company goes a little bit further. Now, this company is expensive. It's more expensive than the other things. So when we present this to council and ask council to take on policies to help prevent underage drinking, I'm gonna need money for that. And I've already talked to Andy about this, but I want to present it to council and get their backing to get money from what source they decide it needs to come from, and to help do this pilot project. And then with the city of Charleston's program, when they ended their pilot project, they had worked out a deal with IntelliCheck that the businesses that were involved in that could get that product at a reduced rate. So I'm working with IntelliCheck too to see if we could do something like that, and maybe use some funding to help out with that, because one of the things I hear from the bars all the time is their costs keep going through the roof, their insurance keeps going up, and one of the bar owners told me their account is about $3,000 a year to use this particular service to scan all the IDs. But during this pilot project too, we can get data back. We can get data back as to how many IDs were scanned, how many passed, how many failed, how many were questionable. And we can use that data and compare it to the data the university has and see, is there a downward curve of incidences on campus since we instituted this project. Other things that we can put in there as well as the training and those type of things. And ultimately, depending on what the outcome of it is and how that data is, what that data lends to tell us is then we can potentially enact local ordinances that hold businesses to a standard to say, you know, we take this very seriously. This is somewhat of an epidemic, for lack of a better description, maybe not an epidemic, but you know where I'm going with this. In our community, and if you're going to be a business that sells alcohol, we expect you to run that business a certain way. No different than if you had another business down the road and they, you know, they had the potential for making a lot of noise, and you put noise restrictions on how much noise that they can make. I don't see this any different. As if you're going to sell alcoholic beverages, we're going to expect you to do these things. We're going to expect you to have the training. We're going to expect you to do these things to help prevent it. And so,
How many in the pilot program are you anticipating?
I'm waiting to hear back from IntelliCheck to see how much it's going to cost. I gave them an initial count of 15 to 20. And some of that cost is because this works on a device like a cell phone, it has to have connectivity to the internet so it can talk to the servers. Some of the businesses that I may approach about this, they have very poor connectivity issues at their establishment. So I'm talking with another company that might be able to provide some of the devices during the pilot project to see if we can, you know, get them to use it. Some of those same businesses said they're working with the local internet providers to get faster internet service. So they're already working on that for their own business reasons. But until that happens, I don't want them to be excluded because they have that connectivity problem. And it may also be something down the road when we put these ordinances in place that if we still see continued MIPs out of those businesses, then we may be in a situation where we mandate that they use these products. And if we still see that they're not in compliance, there may be some other sanctions that come along with it. So that's way down the road. We want to do the pilot project first to see, does it have an effect? How much will it cost? And what data we get back to help us with that. So if the board is you know, willing to do so, we'll do a, you know, and you want to support this, you guys discuss it, but we can do a discussion item in the latter part of October with the council and see if they back it. We'll have Jennifer and Kelly come back and do the same presentation to the council, and then we'll roll out the pilot program. Hopefully I'll know more cost-wise and how many that are going to be part of the pilot. Now, to say, you know, I mentioned earlier with Charleston, they didn't limit the discount of the product to just the people that were involved in the pilot. They expanded it to all the businesses that were there. And then that would be unfair for us to do something like that too, because I can't get every business on this pilot program. I doubt very much I'd have the funding for that. But IntelliCheck seemed to be willing to work with us to get this rolling out, especially in a college, a town with a college in it. I mean, I think they could definitely benefit from this as well.
So can we get a motion and just take a vote on if this is something that we want to support Chief in his efforts with council on this?
Sure.
So moved.
I think we need wording. What
Yeah.
you say when you're moving, I move that.
So
I can.
let me just throw this out.
hear more about
Let me just throw this out, and you guys massage it how you want. So I have this. I said a resolution or statement by council recognizing the public health concerns and pledging to enact programs and/or an ordinance changes to address the issue, to establish desired business practices for businesses that sell and serve alcoholic beverages. Some kind of preventative measure, and support a pilot project to move in that direction.
One concern I see is you want to, as a business owner, we don't want to, in my mind, pass on something that says, okay, now you have to do more. It's going to cost more. I know this is very important, but I want to be careful that we don't
So we,
pass on something that says they
so
have
we
to.
have to make sure there's an incentive.
Right.
So based on my conversations with the company, I want to be able to provide some type of discount or supplemental to the cost of this for them to voluntarily use it at first. They don't have to use it, okay? However, if they are not conducting their business in such a manner to help prevent the sale of alcohol to underage folks, then it may become mandatory at some point. Now, if it becomes mandatory, I realize I may have to either supply that service to them at a cost to the city, or that could potentially be part of the sanction of them mandatorily using it. So that's something to be debated down the road. The pilot project, though, I think is paramount. We got to collect the data and see what the pilot project shows us first before we can take the next steps after that.
Okay, so then the motion, I don't know if we have that in the minutes, the way you worded it. Yes, okay, so, but to establish a pilot program to assess what you said for that proposal to City Council. I know that's not the specific language, but it'll be in the minutes. Can we go ahead and take a vote on that?
Sure.
Okay, everyone in
Maybe
favor
we'll
of
give
that?
you more information about it
Okay.
later when we got a little more time and schedule, but we could, yeah, yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
We're good? Everybody voted?
I think it had been seconded previous.
Yeah, he seconded it,
And then we got
then we
more
talked
specific
about it.
language. So really, we're supposed to do the second motion, call the question and vote on that, but I think we'll call it good. Or do you want to go back and vote again?
Did we vote?
That's what I asked.
I didn't notice.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much. And just as a side note, I sent you all a while back our crime map. It's working better now. Those are all the alcohol-related violations in the last 28 days in the city that you're seeing up there right now.
All right, we're just at 7 o'clock, so why don't we go ahead with the
Okay.
department status and crime review?
Real quickly, we still have 3 vacancies. We are hiring 1 person, I think, next week. For officer, we have 1 officer that just came out of the academy. She's finishing up her training, and we have 1 officer that's graduating from the academy Friday of next week. I have 1 dispatch vacancy right now that I need to fill. We lost our dispatcher earlier than we expected. We have 1 dispatcher in training, so that we did hire, so she's finishing up on that. And just real quickly, some follow-up. I've been going out with the council members and doing noise meter readings so that they can get an idea of what decibel levels at what distances. I still have 3 more to do. I think we're going to do that next Friday. And then we'll bring it before them to add the decibel thing to the noise ordinance. And yes, some of them do know about what's going on in Greenville right now, because some of them brought that to my attention. And just real quickly, a success story real fast with some of the technology and stuff that we have put into place this past weekend. We had several apartments that were entered, a bunch of electronics and keys and such that were stolen. Our officers took reports. Our detective, Chris Chancellor, came in on Monday, had already gotten a phone call about it before he even saw the cases. Got the cases assigned to him. He has an excellent working relationship with the apartment complex managers, was able to look at the surveillance video, was able to get a photo of the suspect, compared it in our facial recognition software, which gave him a potential name. That person is known by another detective. We were able to locate him, and most if not all of the items were recovered, and he was charged. And it happened within 3 days of it occurring. So just having that technology available and the training that those detectives have gone through, and the tenacity, especially for Detective Chancellor, he loves his job and does not let grass grow underneath his feet, that's for sure. So anyway, so crime review real quick. We had, let's see, 2 break-ins in the month of August, 5 from a motor vehicle. We had 15 narcotics cases. Just drunkenness and liquor violations, we had 43 in August. Obviously, our students are back, and that's where a lot of them come from. We had 7 DUIs in the month of August, and that is, we had 1 sex assault reported to us in the month of August, and that is it for the crime review.
All right, thank you. Any questions on that for Chief? Okay, next on the agenda, we have the recruitment of board members. Do we know yet when the city is posting the applications?
They do that at the end of the year, but on relation to that, and Ashby, this affects you,
I got an email on that today.
I didn't-
So we have the change for the
They will
high
be
school.
posting the applications around the end of October. Any of you that are interested in reapplying, that your terms are up in the list that I gave you, just let me know so that I can give her a heads up when those applications come in. And as soon as they're available, I'll send an email blast to you guys so you know it's ready to go.
Okay, and Chief, can you send out again to the entire board the term dates for everyone?
Yes, I have it. And Ashby's has changed, so Ashby and the college student position are now the academic year, so you don't have to reapply in December. You'll go all the way to the end of May or June, whenever school lets out, and then you'll apply, and whoever, if you're gonna reapply, have you had 2 terms yet?
Yeah, this is her second term.
Her second term? Yeah, so I think she can only do 2, and so whoever,
But you're willing to stay on till the end of the school year?
We'd love to have you finish out your term, for sure.
Well, I mean, we've changed her term, so I think
Yeah.
we should ask her
Right.
again to stay. And now you have to stay. So
but
great.
you just start looking for who might be your replacement if you want to do that, and if you have any ideas, anybody else has any ideas, reach out. But that won't occur till the summertime, so that they'll be right before the end, so we know who's in place for the fall. And I have a copy of the ordinance here if anybody needs to see it.
Okay. And then, any additional requests for presentations, others who might come in front of us for information? I mean, I think we've had a lot of really great speakers so far.
Yeah.
So if there are any others, definitely those can be recommended. And then, do we have any open discussion?
Yeah, so November 23rd would be our November meeting, that's Thanksgiving. So I would like to move that we meet instead December 7th for both the November and December meetings.
We could just eat here.
Are you bringing dinner?
Yeah.
So I will,
So does that make more sense to folks rather than try to
I'm
push it?
randomly picking a date there.
Yeah, rather than try to push
Because
it
Christmas will also be a
yeah,
problem.
so
a
let
week
me,
prior.
it looks like Sandy's got to go. Let me
Oh, heavens, okay.
Let me check and see what dates are available for this room first, because there's other meetings that come
Yeah.
into this room, and I'll send it out to everybody, and
that
then we
sounds
can
good.
vote on it next month.
Okay. All right, do we have any other business? If none, can we motion to adjourn?
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor? All right, here we go.